We're on Samaches Amad Aleph Me'emosai Mitamin Begadim. We had seen in the Mishnah that there's a machlokas between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon when it comes to the burning of the carcasses of the par v'soyer of Yom Kippur, of the bull and the goat of Yom Kippur. At what time does the burner's clothes become tamei? The Tanakama says, as soon as you leave the wall of the Azara. And Reb Shimon says that no, it's only after you begin the ignition of the carcasses. Once the fire has taken hold of the carcasses, so then it's considered to be metame begadim. Now let me just, for the purposes of our discussion, we have to talk about the three machanos of Yisrael. In the desert, the Torah talks about three machanos. There's Machane Shechina, Machane Levia, and Machane Yisrael. Machane Shechina is the place of the Mishkan. Machane Levia is the area surrounding the Mishkan where the Levium encamped. And Machane Yisrael is where all the other Yud Beis Shvatim encamped. When the Jewish people had a Beis HaMikdash, so there was the Machane Shechina, which is the Beis HaMikdash, the Temple Mount, which is the Har HaBayis, that's the Machane Levia, and the city of Yerushalayim is the Machane Yisrael. So please bear that in mind. When we say that you're obligated to burn the par and the soyer, michutz lamachane, we don't just mean that it's outside of the Machane Shechina. We mean that it's outside of Machane Yisrael, that you take it outside of Yerushalayim. This is relevant, as you'll see in just a minute. Tanu Rabbanon, Yotzi el michutz lamachane v'sarafu. The Torah, in the context of Yom Kippur, says that you take the carcass of the par and the soyer outside the camp and burn it. Now, only one camp is mentioned in the context of Yom Kippur. Exclamation point. The Raizel says, why is it that we have another sin offering when a Kohen Gadol makes a mistake? It's called the Par Kohen Mashuach. A Kohen Gadol makes a mistake, and he has to bring a special chatas offering. There too, the Torah prescribes that he takes the carcass of the par, of the bull, and he has to burn it outside of three camps, outside of Machane Yisrael. Why is it then over here that we only say one camp by Yom Kippur? Imkein lama nemar michutz lamachane. Why does it only say outside of the camp? Lomar lecha keven sheyatz chutz lamachane echas mitamin begadim. It's not to tell me that the Yom Kippur avoda is any different from the Par Kohen Mashuach, but rather it's coming to tell me at what point does the burner's clothing become tamei. In other words, the Brisa is working under the assumption, and Rashi speaks this out, that it's based on various psukim that connect the law of the Par Kohen Mashuach to the Par and the Soyer of Yom Kippur, that wherever you have to burn the, or whatever machane you have to remove the carcass out of for the Par Kohen Mashuach, the same holds true for the Par V'Soyer of Yom Kippur. Why then is only one machane mentioned in the context of Yom Kippur? It's to teach you that something does happen even just going outside of one camp. And that is, as soon as you go out of Machane Shechina, the burner's clothing become tamei. And that's why the Tanakama of our Mishnah is of the opinion that as soon as he takes the carcasses outside of the Azara, outside of the courtyard, his clothing becomes tamei. So now the Gemara says, V'hasaminolan. Where do we know that by the Par Kohen Mashuach, you have to take the carcass out of all three camps, out of the Machane Yisrael? Titania, as the Brisa says, V'hotzi es kol hapar chutz l'shalosh machanos. The Brisa says that explicitly, that when it comes to the Par Kohen Mashuach, you have to remove the bull carcass outside of all three camps. Ata omer chutz l'shalosh machanos, o ena ela chutz l'machane echas. Perhaps you'll argue not. Perhaps you'll argue that you only have to remove it out of the Machane Shechina. So kishehu omer bepar ha'eda el michutz lamachane. So let's look at another halacha where the Torah says you burn the carcass outside the camp. There's another halacha called the par ha'eda. The par ha'eda is when all of Klal Yisrael, based upon false instructions from the Sanhedrin, commits an aveira. There they have to bring a korban chatas, and that's called the par ha'eda. So you've got the Par Kohen Mashuach, when the Kohen Gadol makes an error. You've got the par ha'eda when the entire Kehila makes an error, right? So in both of those cases, the Torah says El Michutz Lamachane. She'ein Tamulomar, Sherei Kvar Nemar v'Sarafaso Kasher Sarafis Apar Arishon. Uma Tamulomar El Michutz Lamachane. The observation is the words El Michutz Lamachane, outside the camp, are superfluous when discussing the Par Ha'eda, because the Torah there says burn the Par Ha'eda in the same place where you burn the Par Kohen Mashuach. So if I already know that the Par Kohen Mashuach is outside the camp, why does the Torah have to say El Michutz Lamachane by the Par Ha'eda? So Litein Lo Machane Shenia. It's to tell me that it's not just taking it outside of the camp of Shechina, but you got to take it out of Machane Levia as well, the second camp. Now let's learn about the third camp. Ucheshu Omer Michutz Lamachane Badeshen She'ein Tamuloma. There's another halacha that tells me that on a daily basis, we know that there's something called the Trumas Hadeshen. One scoop of the ash that was burning all night is placed next to the kevish. What do you do with all the other ash? That has to be taken outside of the camp and disposed of in a special ash heap that's outside the camp. Now, why does the Torah have to write the words Michutz Lamachane by the ash protocol? Sherei Kvar Nemar El Shefech Hadeshen. Because when talking about the Par Kohen Mashuach, the Torah tells me you take the Par Kohen Mashuach El Michutz Lamachane outside the camp and burn it at the place of the ash heap. So obviously the ash heap is outside the camp. That I already know. So why does the Torah have to tell me by the ash that's outside the camp? Tein Lo Machane Shlishis. This is to tell me that there are three camps, and therefore, since all of the halachas are connected, the halacha of the ash, the halacha of the Par Ha'eda, the halacha of the Par Kohen Mashuach, and the halacha of the Par and Sar of Yom Kippur are all connected. They're all Michutz Lamachane. The fact that the words Michutz Lamachane are stated twice superfluously teaches me that not only do you take it, the carcass or the ash, outside of one camp, but you take it out of a second camp and even out of a third camp. So that's the halacha. And therefore we apply whatever holds true by the Par Kohen Mashuach. That has to be outside of three camps. Holds true by the Par and Sawyer of Yom Kippur. The Reb Shimon, Hai Michutz Lamachane Mai Ovidle. So now Reb Shimon, we know that Tanakama used the words Michutz Lamachane written for Yom Kippur to tell me that as soon as he goes out of the first camp, out of Machane Shechina, his clothes become tamei. Reb Shimon doesn't look at the pasuk that way. So what does Reb Shimon do with the words Michutz Lamachane in the context of Yom Kippur? Mi boy le'lechetanya. He needs it for another reason, as the Brisa says. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Nemar kan Michutz Lamachane, v'Nemar lahalan Michutz Lamachane. It says over here that you have to burn it Michutz Lamachane, and it says later on by the Para Aduma that you have to burn the red heifer outside the camp. Ma'kan chutz l'shalosh machanos, af lahalan chutz l'gimel machanos. That number one teaches me that the Para Aduma is supposed to be burned outside of three camps. Umalahalan b'mizracha shel Yerushalayim, afkan b'mizracha shel Yerushalayim. And just like the Para Aduma we know is burned on the east side of the temple, because you have to be able to see the entrance of the temple from where you're burning the Para Aduma, and that's on the east side. We know that the main entrance is on the east. So too, the place of burning for the Par V'Sar of Yom Kippur has to be on the east side of the temple by Har HaZeisim, as we talked about before. So basically, Reb Shimon tells you that the reason for the words Michutz Lamachane that are written superfluously by Yom Kippur is to teach me halacha about the Para Aduma, plus to teach me from the Para Aduma I learn that when you go out of the three machanos, you can't just choose any old place to burn your Par V'Sar. You have to dafka choose a place on the east side of Yerushalayim. V'Rabbanon heichasarif lehu. Now the Rabba, according to the Chachamim, who don't have this connection to Para Aduma, where do they hold that you're supposed to burn the Par V'Sar? Kedatanya, as the Brisa says, Heicha nisrafim litzefona shel Yerushalayim v'chutz l'shalosh machanos. According to the Chachamim, you go out of Yerushalayim to the north, not to the east, because they don't have this connection to the Para Aduma. Why then to the north? So Rashi says it's based upon the general principle that all avoda for a sin offering for a chatas is done al yerech hamizbeach tzafona, is always done on the north side of the mizbeach. So if the Torah is telling you to go outside of Yerushalayim and burn something, that's a sin offering. Logic dictates that it should be outside of Yerushalayim to the north. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Abeis Adesh Nisrafin. Rabbi Yossi disagrees with the Tana Kama and says that I don't agree that it necessarily has to be in the north, but I hold, or it could be that he's agreeing, but he's adding an extra halacha, and that halacha is that you're obligated to make the place where you're going to be burning all of these parim, it has to first be made into an ash heap before you can use it as a place of burning animals. In other words, according to Rabbi Yossi, the area which you're going to be burning the par and the soyer of Yom Kippur, and the par kohen mashuach, and the par ha'eda, it's the same place where you burn the deshen, where you just basically stock the deshen from the mizbeach and the Beis Hamikdash. But you first have to designate that area as an ash dump before you burn anything else on it. That's the way Rabbi Yossi learns. Amar Rava Mantan the Poligalei de Rabbi Yossi, who is the Tana seemingly of this brisa that disagrees with Rabbi Yossi and does not require the area to be pre-designated as an ash heap. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the Tanya El Shefech Hadeshen Yisaref Sheyehei L'Shem Deshen. Because as the brisa says, the first opinion seems to be going like Rabbi Yossi. It says when the Torah talks about the par kohen mashuach having to be burned at the place of the Shefech Hadeshen, where the ash is dumped, so that's what the pasuk says. Burn the carcass in the place where you dump the ash. So therefore you see from the language of the pasuk that it has to be pre-designated as an ash dump before you're allowed to burn the carcass. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, no, sheyehi makomo mishupach. He says that's not what the pasuk means to say. It's not that it's pre-designated as an ash dump, but rather all it means is that you have to burn the carcass in a place where if you were to pour ash there, the ash would roll down because it's on a slope. So it's really a description of the terrain such that when you pour something that easily spills, it flows downwards. That's all the pasuk is telling you, and therefore, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, you see that you don't necessarily require a pre-designation of an ash heap in the place where you're going to be burning the carcass. So Amar le Abaya v'dilma b'makomo meshupachu depligi. Abaya says, how do you know that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov completely disagrees with the Tana Kama? Maybe he agrees with the Tana Kama that the area has to be pre-designated. But the difference, the machlokas between him and the Tana Kama is, the Tana Kama says it can be flat, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that it has to be sloped. But both of them agree that maybe, perhaps, as Abaya, both of them agree that it has to be pre-designated as ash. So we don't yet definitively know of a Tana that disagrees with Rabbi Yossi and holds that you don't need to predefine or pre-designate the area as an ash dump. Tana Rabbanan, the Brisa now says, Vehasoref, the person who's going to burn the par and the soyer, his clothing shall become tamei. Hasoref metame begodem velo hametzes esaor velo hamesaderes hama'aracha. That only the person who actually burns the carcasses becomes tamei, but not a person who ignites the fire, nor a person who sets up the firewood. Ve'ezeu hasoref. And what's the definition of the burner of the carcasses? He's got to be actively involved to make sure that the carcasses take hold of the fire takes hold of the carcasses while the carcasses are burning. So he's going to have like a poker with him, and he'll be stoking the carcasses to make sure they burn properly. That's the person whose clothing becomes tamei. Then the Brisa continues, and it says, you might think that even if I stoke the carcasses after they turn into ash, my clothing will also become tamei. So therefore the pasuk says, no, osam, that he who burns them, meaning the carcasses, osam etamim begadim, velo mishanasu ephraim etamim begadim. Only the intact carcasses make someone tamei, but not if I stoke just the ash of those carcasses. That's already post facto, and therefore my clothing will not become tamei. Rabbi Eliezer Reb Shimon Omer, hapor mitamei, but nitach habasra eno mitamei. Reb Shimon says that only the bull can make someone tameh, but if the flesh is nitach, which seems to be in some way destroyed, which is not clear what that means, but probably when it's totally burnt, it's destroyed, then it's not mitame. So the Gemara asks, "My beinayu," what's the difference between the Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon? They both seem to be saying that once the animal is completely burnt, it's not mitame begadim anymore. So what's the difference between the two? Ika beinayu deshavya charucha. The answer is that, let's say you completely carbonize the carcass, but it hasn't yet been crumbled into ash, meaning that it's a completely intact, burnt piece of burnt animal. So according to the Tanakama, if I stoke that, my begadim will be tameh. According to Elazar Reb Shimon, since the flesh has been completely destroyed and no longer is flesh, but it's completely carbonized, so then it's not metame begadim anymore. That's the machlokes.
So only the paraduma had a specific place in its phone. Everything else were coming out that...
the paraduma is in the east.
I mean, this rock, rather, yeah.
Right.
That's the only one that has a specific place?
Well, it's a machlokes. I mean, the paraduma we know is in the east because you have to be able to see the entrance to the Beis Hamikdash. And one Mando Amar says that just like the burning of the paraduma is in the east, so too all of the other times when you burn a carcass, it has to be in the east because of the Gzeir Shava that we make to paraduma from Yom Kippur. The other Mandomer says, no, I don't hold of that to Gzeir Shava, and therefore Svara Nosenes, that this logic dictates that it should be done in the north. Okay, let's go on to the Mishnah. Amr lo Kohen Gadol, Higia Seir Lamidbar. Now, they inform the Kohen Gadol after we send out the carcasses of the par and the Seir to be burned, that he's allowed to commence with the avoda because the goat has reached the desert. In other words, what we're learning from this Mishnah is that while all of these other activities are taking place, remember the Kohen has slit open the goat and the Seir, he's taken out the kishkas, he's put them on a tray. We then take the carcasses and we schlep them outside the machane to be burned. But the Kohen Gadol cannot commence doing the avoda on the Mizbeach and the Beis HaMikdash until he receives verification that the Seir LaAzazel has made it into the Midbar. Right? He can't do anything with the Mizbeach until he knows that that's taken place. So we inform him of that fact. How do we know? How can we be sure that the goat has reached the desert? So one opinion is that we would have people in position all the way from Yerushalayim to the beginning of the desert, right? And they would be waving handkerchiefs like a relay team, and they would let know when the goat got to the edge of the Judean desert. The guy out there by the edge would wave his sudar, and then the guy closer would wave his sudar. We get all the way back to Yerushalayim until it got to the Kohen Gadol. So Amar Reb Yehuda v'alo siman gadol hayilam Yerushalayim v'yad beis chadudo. So Reb Yehuda disagrees. He says you didn't need people to wave handkerchiefs or wave flags because there was a very simple way to know, because we know exactly the distance from Yerushalayim to a place called Beis Chadudo, which is at the edge of the Judean desert. Shlosha milin. It's a 3 mil distance. And it's very easy to approximate when the Mishaleach is going to get to that point at the edge of the Judean desert, because Holchin mil, V'chozrin mil, V'shon kedei mil, V'yodin she'yagia seir lamidbar. Because basically all we have to do, we know there's going to be an entourage that's going to escort the Mishaleach for 1 mil, as we learned yesterday that's where the first hut is. And we escort the Mishaleach to the first hut. So that takes 1 mil. Then it's going to take the entourage 1 mil to get back. So by the time they get back, it's already 2/3 interval. Just approximate the time it takes to walk another mil. And once that time is elapsed from the time that the entourage returns, so then you can assume that the goat has made it to Azazel. In other words, according to Reb Yehuda, you don't have to know with absolute certainty that the goat has made it to Azazel. All you need to do is approximate the time frame, and you can assume that he's made it. Now, we continue. Reb Yishmael Omer, v'halo siman acher hayalahem, lashon shel zuhuris hayakasher al pischo shel heichal. Now, Reb Yishmael, if you remember from yesterday's DAF, there was a machlokes as to exactly how you're supposed to tie the red string. We know that originally the minhag was to tie it inside the Beis HaMikdash by the doorway of the Ulam, and that minhag was later changed to tie it out in the desert on the rock, half on the rock and half between the horns of the goat. But originally it's like Rabbi Shmuel says. He says, based on the time when he's living, he says, you don't need any other symbol. Once the goat makes it out to the Judean desert, immediately that's when the string would turn pale. So then if the string turns pale, then the Kohen Gadol could commence with his avoda.
Not when it goes over the cliff?
Not when it goes over the cliff, as we learned yesterday also, that the kapara takes place as soon as the goat gets into the desert.
That's
right?
only if it's the tshuva is accepted, right?
That's assuming that it was accepted, right?
So
and when the goat gets into the desert, haya halashon malbin. That's when the string would become pale. Shenamar, as it says, imihiu chatoechem kashonim kasheleg yalbinu. As the pasuk in Yeshaya says, that if your sins are like scarlet, they will turn into a white string. So it's the same premise. Obviously, we understand that Rabbi Shmuel's solution will only work historically at a time when the string was tied in the Beis HaMikdash. But once the practice of tying the string was moved to the desert, then you couldn't rely on that anymore. You either had to hold like the Tanakama, that they had people waving flags, or like Rabbi Yehuda says, that you used a time estimation to estimate when the goat got out to the desert. The Gemara says, Amar Abaye, Shema Mina, Beis Chadudo Bamidbar Kaima. We see from our Mishnah that this known place called Beis Chadudo is where the desert begins. In other words, if you want to be, there's a question where Beis Chadudo actually is it considered to be the beginning of the desert? You see from a Mishnah that it is. B'hakamashma, we also see from our Mishnah, the Kesavar Rebbe Yehuda, Kevin Shegia Sila Midbar, Nases Mitzvasa. That as soon as and some say that you take out the words Rebbe Yehuda because it's universal in our Mishnah, that as soon as the goat gets to the edge of the desert, starts its way into the desert, immediately that's when the kapara takes place. You don't have to wait for it to be pushed over the cliff. But of course we know that that's a machlokes that we had seen previously. Hadron alach shnei seirei. Okay, let's go on to the next Mishnah. Now, before the Kohen Gadol is going to commence with the avoda, there's one other thing that he's going to do, and that is he's going to read from the Sefer Torah. There's a halacha that we learned in the first parak, that part of his work on the day of Yom Kippur is he's got a lane. He's got to do Kriyas Torah from Parshas Achrei Mos, from Parshas Emor, and from Parshas Pinchas, the three places in the Torah which discuss the avoda for Yom Kippur. Balo Kohen Gadol Likros. And now it's time for the Kohen Gadol to read from the Torah. Imratza likros bevigdei butz korei, v'imlav korei b'itzlis lavan mishalo. He either has the option of laning from while wearing his white bigdei kahuna that he was wearing when he was doing the avoda, or let's say if he feels more comfortable wearing his own personal tunic, he has a right to change clothes at that moment. Now we'll talk about that shortly. Now, Chazan HaKnesses, Rashi says, is the Shamas. And we're not talking about the Shamas of the Beis HaMikdash, we're talking about the Shamas of the synagogue. There was a synagogue adjacent to the temple. The Kohen Gadol would, and this was where you did Kriyas. You did not do Kriyas Torah in the Beis HaMikdash for this purpose. You did it in a room or a chamber that was known as the Beis HaKnesses, that is adjacent to the Beis HaMikdash. Lahavdil elef havdalos. I was thinking to myself that in the Temple Mount today, the Muslims do the same thing. They have Haram al-Sharif, which is the Dome of the Rock, which is not a Beis HaKnesses, and then they have the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the Silver Dome, which is where they daven. So it almost seems like there's a precedent for that in the Mishnah. There was a place for Avoda, and there's a place for Kriyas HaTorah. We do both. And I should say that it's really not a good analogy, because tefillah is a surrogate for karbanos. So really, they really should daven in the Haram al Sharif, Baruch Hashem that they don't, right? But for whatever reason. But in any event, Chazan HaKnesses notel Sefer Torah v'nostel l'rosh HaKnesses. So the shamus of the synagogue takes the Sefer Torah gives it to the head of the Knesset, which is the person who's the Gabbai. He's in charge of determining who's reading, who's getting the kibudim, and so forth, like Alan Steinfeld. Barosh HaKnesses nosno lisgan. The Gabbai then gives it to the Sgan, which is the deputy Kohen Gadol. Sgan nosno Kohen Gadol, and he in turn gives it to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol omedu makabel v'koreh. Then the Kohen Gadol stands, and he's remaining standing. He takes the Sefer Torah and he reads from it. What does he read? Acharei mos va'ach be'asar. He reads the protocol of the avoda with the bulk of which is in Parshas Acharei mos. Then he rolls it a few columns to get to Parshas Emor, which has a paragraph about Yom Kippur. And then v'golel Sefer Torah u'menicha b'cheka. He then rolls up the Sefer and places it in his bosom. Va'omer yoser mimashe karas lifnechem kasuv kan uve'asar shebechumash apikudim kori alpeh. That he says there's more beyond what is written, what I've read for you from the Sefer. There's more that I'm going to say for you ba'al peh verbatim, and he cites the paragraph in Parshas Pinchas uve'yom haKippurim, right, which talks about the korban musaf that you bring on Yom Kippur. Now, what's curious over here is, why not just roll the Sefer Torah? What's the answer, Alan? Tircha de Tzibura. Which is why, as you know...
That's why you're Gabbai.
Which is why, that's right. That's why, Alan and I have discussed this before. It's a terrible violation of halachic protocol to come to a shul and not have the Sefer Torah rolled to it where it's supposed to be. You see this from the Mishnah. The Kohen Gadol could have rolled the Sefer Torah to Parshas Pinchas, but you don't want to be matriach l'tzibur. People are standing there waiting. That's not decorum. All right, umavarich aleha shmona brachos, and then once he's finished reciting the psukim ba'al peh from Parshas Pinchas, he makes 8 brachos. Almost sounds like the ending of the Haftorah, but here there's no Haftorah, there's just the Kriyas HaTorah, and he makes 8 blessings at the end. Number 1 is Al HaTorah. He says, Asher nasan lanu Toras emes, like the regular ending of the bracha of the Torah. He makes another bracha called Al HaAvoda, where he thanks Hashem for allowing us to bring karbanos and asking Hashem to accept our service. The Al HaHoda'ah, giving thanks to Hashem for all the goodness that He does for us. And the Al Mechilas Ha'avon, asking Hashem to forgive sin. Next is V'al HaMikdash B'fnei Atzmo. He makes a separate bracha for the Beis HaMikdash, where he thanks Hashem, or he davens that Hashem should watch over the temple. V'al Yisrael B'fnei Atzmo, he says a separate bracha on the Jewish people. Please Hashem watch over the Jewish people. V'al Yerushalayim B'fnei Atzmon. And then he says a separate bracha of Yerushalayim for the city of Jerusalem. Please protect the city. And ve'ala kohanim b'fnei atzman. And the number 8 is he makes a separate bracha just for the kohanim. And he says, Baruch shebachar bezara shel Aaron v'chein al Yisrael. Blessed is Hashem who has chosen the seed of Aaron. And those are the 8 brachos. Va'al shar hatfila, those 3 words really don't have very much meaning. It says, and he also says a blessing over the remainder of the prayer. What that means is not clear. The Gemara will clarify. Haroa Kohen Gadol Kishu Korei Eino Roa Parvasar Hanisrafim Varoa Parvasar Hanisrafim Eino Roa Kohen Gadol Kishu Korei. So the Mishnah just makes an observation. If you're going to be present to watch the Kohen Gadol reading from the Sefer Torah, you won't be able to see them burning the bull and the goat outside of Yerushalayim, and vice versa. If you choose to go witness the burning of the Parvasar, you won't be able to make the Kriyas HaTorah. Not because you're not allowed to. Of course you'd be allowed to, but it's logistically impossible. They're taking place simultaneously, and the distance is too far to be able to run back and forth from one to the other. So basically, you have to make up your mind. If you're going to be in Yerushalayim for Yom Kippur, and you want to be part of the Yom Kippur of activity in the Beis HaMikdash, you have to choose which show, so to speak, in the most reverent of ways, which show you want to be a part of. You want to go see the burning of the Parvasar, or do you want to hear the Kohen Gadol read the Sefer Torah? I guess a lot of it would depend upon what your past experiences were. A lot of it would depend where you feel you're going to get more of an aliyah ruchnius dika aliyah? Will it be through the burning of the parvasoyer? Will it be through the listening to the voice of the Kohen Gadol? I guess there's a lot that goes into this cheshbon as far as where you choose to go.
Could Yisrael be there by Kriyas Torah?
Yeah.
Is it allowed in the shul?
Sure. It's not even part of the Azar. So the Gemara now says, Midikatani be'itztalis lavan mishalo bichlal dekriya lavavodi. So the Gemara makes an interesting diuk. It says the very fact that the Kohen Gadol is allowed to change out of his big day kahuna and put on his own personal tunic indicates that this Kriyas HaTorah is not really part of the formal avoda. And ukatani imratza likros bevigdei butz kore. And at the same time, the Mishnah tells us that he still has the option of keeping his big day kahuna on, his white linen big day kahuna. So shamas mina big day kahuna nitnu lehanos bahen. So we can prove from this that a Kohen is allowed to be engaged in personal activity that's non-avoda related and benefit by wearing the big day kahuna while he's doing that. So that seems to be a fair diuk. And what the Gemara is going to point out is that this is a machlokas. It's discussed elsewhere in Shas. So the Gemara says, well, one second. Dilma shiny kriya ditzarach avodei. Maybe not. Maybe it's only that we give him the option of wearing the big day kahuna when he's reading from the Torah, because that's an ancillary component of the avoda. You're right, it's not the formal avoda, but it's a necessary component of things that need to be done on Yom Kippur. So that's enough of a reason to allow him to wear the big day kahuna. But to let him wear big day kahuna while he's checking his email, right, that's completely for personal use. That you don't necessarily see from this. So what's the background of all of this discussion? Di'i ba'ilan, because the question is raised, big day kahuna nitnu lehanos ben, alo nitnu lehanos ben. That there's a general question in the base medrash: is a Kohen allowed to get personal benefit from his big day kahuna or not? Meaning that once my avoda day is over, do I immediately have to disrobe and I can't walk even a few feet with personal benefit from the big day kahuna? Or am I allowed to get personal benefit from them? So Tashma. So come and listen to the following proof. Lo hayu yushenim b'big day kodesh, that it was not permitted to sleep with your big day kahuna. Now what's the issue with sleep? So we know that sleeping is a problem because shema yafiach, that a person may flatulate when he is sleeping, and that would be a desecration of the big day kahuna, that you don't want to pass gas when you're wearing such holy clothes. So sheinahu delo. But what you can deduce from there is the only prohibition is to sleep with the big day kahuna, but to eat where you're fully awake and you can control yourself, there it seems like it is permitted. So you see, they want to bring a proof from here that a Kohen is allowed to get personal benefit from his big day kahuna and do personal stuff. So the Gemara says, no, dilma shayni achila ditzarach avodei. Maybe eating is permitted only because it is also an ancillary part of the avoda. Kedetanya, as the Brisa says, v'yachlu osam asher kupar bahem. I believe this is written in the context of a korban chatas, that the Kohen shall eat the flesh that is being used to atone. So melamed shakohanim ochlim ubolim iskaprim. So you see from that pasuk that the very act of eating on behalf of the Kohanim, right, is in itself part of the atonement process. So maybe that's the reason why we can sanction the Kohen eating while in his big day kahuna, but checking his email, maybe not. So sheinahu deloha hiluche malchi. But then let's bring another diuk. The Brisa only prohibits sleeping. It doesn't say only eating is permitted, right? It says only sleeping is prohibited. So that would imply that all other activities, such as taking a shpatzir, taking a stroll while in your big day kahuna, is permitted, right? So the Gemara says no. B'dinu dehiluche namilo. Maybe you can't make that diuk from the Brisa. Maybe the Brisa specifically chooses to talk about sleep, but other personal activities are also prohibited. Why then would it only single out sleep? For the simple reason that the next part of the Brisa says that when the Kohen goes to sleep and he's taken off his priestly garments, he's allowed to fold up the garments and use it as a pillow underneath his head. That's the point. The point is that only sleeping with the garments on is permitted, but using the garments as a pillow is permitted. And that's the chiddush why the Brisa chooses to talk about sleep, But in reality, other activities are also prohibited while you're wearing your big day kahuna. So the Gemara says, but that in itself is a raya. The very fact that I'm allowed to use my big day kahuna as a pillow is a raya that you're allowed to get personal benefit from them. So you see that in itself. Okay, fine. Maybe you can't bring a raya from the first part of the brisa, but you can bring a raya from the second part of the brisa that a kohen is allowed to get personal benefit. So Amar Rav Papa, lo tema tachas roshein, ela ema kineged roshein. No, Rav Papa. Brisa is not telling you that you can use the big day kahuna as a pillow. It's telling you that when you do go to sleep, you're allowed to place the big day kahuna next to your head. In other words, it's not considered to be disrespect to the big day kahuna to be sleeping in its presence. As long as you're treating them respectfully by folding them up and putting them to the side and by your head, then that's fine. So Amar Rav Misharshi Hashamas Mina Tefillin Min Hatzad Shapir Dami. So you see, just incidentally from here, that would be the same halacha by tefillin, even though tefillin has kedusha. Don't think that you have to put it mamish in another room to go to when you sleep. No, you can leave it by your head. As long as you leave it in a respectful position when you're sleeping, it can be right next to you. But so the Gemara says, but you don't see from here, because based on Rav Papa's reading of the brisa is not advocating using your big day kahuna as a pillow, but rather putting it next to your head. So you're not getting any personal benefit from it. So how do we know that Rav Papa is right? The Gemara says, Hachanami mistavra. It has to be like Rav Papa says, because the keneged rosheim, that it's not underneath your head, but next to your head. The isal kadai tachas rosheim, b'tepukle mishum kilayim. Dahayika avneit. He says, because even if you were going to get around the problem of Kohanim getting personal benefit from big day kahuna, let's say you were going to argue that a Kohen is allowed to get personal benefit from his big day kahuna. But you have another problem. The problem is, what about the fact that he's wearing shatnez? And by using a shatnez pillow, that's prohibited. How can he use a shatnez pillow? So, unihinami denisnu lehanos behen hamisanami kilayim. Even if you'll grant me that he's allowed to get personal benefit, but how can he benefit from something that's shatnez? So the Gemara says, to answer that question, Hanich lamando amar avneto shel kohen gadol. Let me just tell you the Bach's girsa. Avneto shel kohen gadol b'yom HaKippurim zehu avneto shel kohen hedjot b'shar yemos hashana. However, el lamando amar avneto shel kohen gadol b'yom HaKippurim lo zehu avneto shel kohen hedjot b'shar yemos hashana ma yikol ameima. So we know that there's a machlokes. We know that the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur wore the white clothing, and his sash was completely linen. So there's one opinion that says that the sash that the Kohen Gadol wore on Yom Kippur is the very same sash that a regular Kohen would wear throughout the year. According to that opinion, then the sash of a regular Kohen is not made of shatnez, and therefore you don't have a problem. You wouldn't be faced with this problem of using the sash as a pillow. But according to the other opinion, which says that the Kohen Gadol sash on Yom Kippur is not the same sash as a Kohen Hedjot during the rest of the year, because the Kohen Hedjot sash is made out of shatnez, what are you going to say? You have to conclude that Rav Papa is right, that you're not using it as a pillow, but rather putting it next to you. And maybe you'll try to defend yourself by saying that no, maybe really it's made out of kilayim, but you're allowed to use it as a pillow. Why? Because the Torah only prohibits wearing shatnez, but using it as a cushion or as a pillow is okay. No, but ve'hatanya lo yale alecha, aval ata muter lahatzio tachtecha, aval amru chachamim asur lasus kein shemati karich nima achas al bisaro. But we know, biblically that happens to be true. From the psukim in the Torah we know that it is not usur to use something that's made out of kilayim as a cushion or as a pillow. However, Chazal still assered that. Chazal said that you're not allowed to, because maybe inadvertently a thread will protrude out of your cushion or out of your pillow, and it'll wrap itself around you, and you'll end up wearing shatnez. So therefore, that would not be a rationale to let the Kohanim use their shatnez clothing as a pillow. Maybe you'll argue that the Rabbanan only assered it if you're directly on the shatnez. But let's say you have a shatnez pillow, and then you put, let's say, a blanket of cotton to separate between the shatnez pillow and yourself, that would be okay. That's also not okay, because V'amar Reb Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Reb Yeshua ben Levi, Amar Rebbe Mishum Kehila Kadisha Shabi Yerushalayim, Afilu Eser Matzo Zu Al Gavzu, the Kilayim Tachteim Asur Lishan Aleim. That even if you have, like the Princess and the Pea, even if you have 10 cushions, 10 mattresses above Kilayim, and you're on top of the 10th mattress, that's still Asur. It's an Isser D'Rabbanan, but it's still Asur. So we cannot sanction the Kohanim sleeping on, using their Kilayim sash as a pillow. So Elalav Shmamina, Keneged Roshein Shmamina. We must therefore conclude that it is Keneged Roshein. It's not underneath their heads as a pillow. That's not going to be permitted, even if we get around the problem of a Kohen being allowed to get personal Hana from his Big Day Kahuna, but to be allowed to use something that shatnez to rest on, that for sure we're not going to be able to get around. And we must therefore conclude that when a Kohen goes to sleep, he puts it not as a pillow, but next to his head, not underneath his head. And I'll finish off with just a quick story. There's a story they say about the stipler gun. We talk about shatnez, you know the story, talk about shatnez in a cushion. The stipler, many of you know, is the father of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. He married the sister of the Chazon Ish. And when he was a bacher, and the shidduch was read to the sister of the Chazon Ish, so he had to travel a long distance by train in order to get to wherever the Karelitz family was living. And it was like a long train ride. He got on the train, he noticed that the seats, the cushioned seats, were made of fabric. And he said, who knows, maybe the shatnez there. So he didn't sit the whole trip. It was like taking a red eye, right? So the whole night they're on the train. He's standing the whole time. By the time they arrive, he's totally gishmeter. So he comes into the Karelitz home. They say, please sit down. We'll bring the maidel to you. By the time she gets to meet him, he's asleep on the couch. So they wanted to be mavatal the shidduch. What kind of letz is this guy who comes and falls asleep at the first date? But he explained, they got to know who he was, and they made the shidduch, which teaches you, don't necessarily make your mind based on first impressions. Have a wonderful day.